Let's bring in Peter Baker, MS Now contributor and chief White House correspondent for the New York Times, and Frank Kendall, former Secretary of the Air Force under the Biden administration, senior fellow at the Center for American Progress, and co-author of Legal Autonomy, The Future of Warfare, Whether We Like It or Not, which will be released in July. So congratulations on the book, Secretary. And I'll start with you, sir, because I want to ask you about Israel's pounding of southern Lebanon and Hezbollah targets. It has resulted in civilian deaths and huge numbers displaced. I believe it was quoted there by the UN Secretary General, 800,000 displaced. How critical is it militarily to keep that bombing up? And is there a point of diminishing returns?
My guess is we've already reached that point. But Israel is pursuing its own goals here. And as was said, they want to weaken their enemies as much as they can while they have the opportunity. And of course, the assistance of the United States, particularly in Iran. So they're going to do what they can while they have freedom to do it, basically, to go after their enemies. Now, Hezbollah did strike Israel, and they have the right to defend themselves. But they're taking full advantage of the opportunity that they have.
So, Peter, look, Lebanon is not Gaza in a sense. Is Israel treating southern Lebanon, though, that way, or is there some restraint?
Well, I mean, look, southern Lebanon has always been a problem from the Israeli point of view strategically, because obviously it's so close to its own northern neighbors. We saw that during the Gaza war when Hezbollah was lobbing rockets in there, and tens of thousands, if not more, Israelis had to move out of northern Israel because they were, in effect, in the line of fire. And so, you know, what Israel has done periodically over the years is try to basically turn southern Lebanon into more of a buffer zone to try to push the threat back further away from their border. I think Secretary Kendall's got the right point here, which is that, you know, they're taking advantage of the moment to do what they can. It's not Gaza, and they're not going to be able to do the same things that they do in Gaza, and they're not trying to, but they have a certain free reign and have always taken free reign in Lebanon, especially when the United States is willing to let them do it.
Peter, there is a new Wall Street Journal report suggesting Trump knew the risks of Iran blocking the Strait of Hormuz, but said Iran would capitulate before that happened, which sort of folds into this headline from The Independent. Having misjudged Iran, Donald Trump risks falling into his own trap. Did Donald Trump misjudge Iran?
Well, it's a good question. A lot of people think that he was so emboldened by how successful the raid into Venezuela was just a few weeks earlier, how easy it seemed, I think, to him to be able to snatch away Nicolas Maduro, the president, and you know, completely change the dynamics there with Venezuela, that he was emboldened to go ahead and think that it would be a relatively, you know, easy thing to do with Iran. And the 12-day war last year obviously went really well. And I think he came to trust his military and say, you guys are really good. The Journal story says that Dan Kane, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, warned him, as you said, about the Strait of Hormuz. And he said, well, I think, well, they'll capitulate before they can do anything. And if they don't, he said, I trust the military to be able to take care of it. Okay, that's fine. But the problem is, I don't think the military thought they had a plan that could be as effective as is necessary to keep that strait open for civilian oil traffic. And remember, 1/5 of the world's oil traffic on the seas goes through that area. That's why you're seeing such, ruptures in the oil markets right now.
Mm-hmm. So, Secretary Kendall, is the U.S. militarily able to keep the Strait of Hormuz open? I mean, how risky is it for U.S. ships to escort oil tankers through there right now?
It's a very challenging job, Alex. You saw the map. There's a very long coastline around there. That's a very rugged country. The straits themselves, fairly narrow shipping lanes. So, you know, attacking them with drones or ballistic missiles or cruise missiles or getting mines out there, it doesn't take much to prevent shippers from putting their vessels at risk going through there. And this has been something we've been very aware of, 30 years. I've been looking at war games and scenario analysis that looked at Iran and the difficulty of a conflict like this. And what we did was we launched that initial attack. We took out all the fixed targets, the high value targets we were aware of. And now we're in a situation where we're trying to hit smaller tactical targets mostly. Iran is twice the size of Texas, more than that. It's a big country. It's a very rugged country. And trucks with missiles on them are kind of hard to find. And we found that out in the first Gulf War over 30 years ago. So there's a tough problem here for the military trying to go do something about this. As long as Iran chooses to accept the punishment that's being inflicted on them, I think it would be very difficult to stop them from interdicting traffic through the strait.
Secretary, the president keeps insisting this conflict will conclude after just a few weeks. But what if in this time period, Iran manages to hold on to its stash of uranium and there is no major regime change? I mean, what happens next? Would it be back to the negotiating table?
I don't know what other alternative there is. For whatever reason, I don't understand this, quite frankly. It makes no sense to me. There was an assumption this would be quick, that there would either be capitulation or that Iranian people would rise up and overthrow the regime. Neither of those have happened. And we've seen how hard it is to suppress resistance like this. The 2 years plus that Israel was pounding Gaza, right? And Hamas is not gone yet. Hezbollah is still there, even though they've been beat back a lot. So I don't know what led the administration to think that this was going to be short and easy. It's proving to be neither. And it's very hard for anybody to predict how it will end now. Donald Trump seems to think he has control, but he does not. Iran has a very important vote in it.
To that end, Peter, there's a new report. One of your colleagues at the Times pointed out Trump has softened his call for protesters to take over Iran. Let's take a listen to what the president said yesterday. It's during an interview on Fox Radio. Here it is.
You just mentioned to me a group of people that go around with machine guns and shoot them down, and they say, if anybody protests, we're going to kill you in the streets. So I really think that's a big hurdle to climb for people that don't have weapons. I think it's a very big hurdle. So that it'll happen, but it probably will be maybe not immediately.
So, Peter, this is a 180 from 2 weeks ago when Trump said to the Iranians with confidence, when we are finished, take over your government. It will be yours to take. What is the best the administration is hoping for now?
Yeah, I don't think that they expect at this point to have a friendly regime in there. There's no plan for it. It's one thing to use air power to take down the top of the regime, to kill the Ayatollah Khamenei, to kill a lot of the people around him. It's another thing to try to actually install some sort of a new government. And there was never actually a plan for the United States to do that. The idea that the people would simply rise up after thousands and thousands of them had been mowed down in the streets during protests earlier this year was always sort of a not farcical, but certainly a long shot out there. And I think that we could hope that that would happen, but it didn't seem very likely even at the time. The president clearly now has come around after 2 weeks to recognize that in a way he didn't before. So the alternatives at this point don't look particularly, advantageous to the United States. What's going to replace the regime? It doesn't look like anything's going to replace the regime except other parts of the regime at this point.
Peter Baker, former Air Force Secretary Frank Kendall. Gentlemen, thank you both so much for your insights.